Looking to break into or advance your career in cybercrime and cybersecurity? Apply now with a master's degree of cybercrime and digital investigation from Michigan State University. Experience a nationally ranked program taught by world-renowned researchers and practitioners that can help you play a role in combating cybercrime and advance justice for victims. Designed to be completed in as little as 2 years and in a flexible online format that can work around your schedule. Visit cj.msu.edu to learn more.
Welcome, everybody, to the Crossing the Firewall podcast. I'm Tom Holt. I'm a professor in the School of Criminal Justice here at Michigan State University. And I'm also the director for the Center for Cybercrime Investigation and Training. And I am here with my excellent co-host, as always. Taylor, introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Taylor. I am a fixed-term assistant professor here at Michigan State University and an associate with the center.
And it is 2026. What a great way to start the year with a good podcast and a good discussion. We're going to break our usual format a little bit and shift from kind of an interview style to do something a little bit more fun. I think it's a nice way to kind of kick the year off with a little bit of a bang. So for today, we're going to be talking about cybercrime in the movies. And we have an excellent guest with us to talk about this. He's one of my oldest friends and a dear colleague of mine. It's Dr. Adam Bossler, who's a professor in the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology at Georgia Southern University. Adam, great to have you.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Taylor. I'm really looking forward to this discussion, debate, battle, brawl, throwdown. So I'm looking forward to this.
And Adam, you are a person who I know watches a fair amount of movies, and I thought this would be a great topic for us to discuss. But before we get into discussing cybercrime movies, I guess the first thing we have to ask is, what qualifies as a cybercrime movie in your mind? Adam, what do you think when you think of a cybercrime movie?
That was the issue that I probably spent the most time originally was thinking about that, and I kept on getting stuck about whether is it really a cybercrime movie or is there just some kind of technology involved with it. So, and of course, maybe just like you guys, I ended up Googling like the best cybercrime movies of all time. And I saw some of their list and I was like, really? I would never consider that a cybercrime movie. So I think when we start talking about the movies, my movies really heavily focus on hacking and computer hacking, it seems like, and really not anything else on the rest of the spectrum. So it seems to have a really strong focus on someone with some kind of specialization in computers. And it really has to be like the heart of the movie and not just like a robbery of a hotel and one member of the team is a hacker, but more of like the entire heart of the movie is something about computer hacking is what I focused on.
Taylor, how about you?
Yeah, I would second that. I was kind of surprised. I certainly did Google some things because, when you're put on the spot, you're like, I know I've seen a movie with cybercrime in it. I just can't think of it, right? And maybe because we're so inundated with it, we don't see it as separately as other people do. But certainly a bunch of hacker pieces came up. Some of the old school, like early hacking movies came up. But I certainly think it needs to be sort of in the context of that is the plot, if that makes sense. Kind of to what Dr. Bossler was saying, right? That just because somebody uses a cell phone while they're committing a robbery or whatever, doesn't mean that it's a cybercrime, even though we would consider that like digital evidence. And so I kind of took the same approach of just because technology's in it doesn't necessarily mean cybercrime. But I did struggle a little bit because I had a couple, and one of the ones that's on my list is in the future, right? And kind of like future technology, what could be done with cybercrime. And so that also kind of threw me off of, does that count? Well, we're defining what counts. So I'm going to say yes.
All right. I agree with both of your points. I think a good cybercrime movie is going to focus more on the technology. I think you're right. Like you could put, any movie where the Ocean's films have some light computer hacking in them, but they're not really cybercrime movies. So I think that's a fair line to draw. So for today, we were going to do a sort of snake-style draft of our favorite cybercrime movies, or at least ones that we think are good in their depiction, or maybe it's so bad it's good. It's up to you, however you want to define that. So we'll start with Taylor, then we'll do Adam, then me, then Adam, then Taylor, and we'll do this a couple of different times. And from there, I think we're going to have a lot of fun. So Taylor, I'll let you lead off. What's your first pick?
So my controversial first pick, and this is controversial because it is one of the future concepts, but I went with Minority Report here. Um, the reason being is I saw it really early in my high school career for the first time, and it was my AP bio teacher that turned me onto it. He's like, I think you're going to like this movie. And I was like, okay. And then the whole time I'm watching it, I'm thinking, this is terrible. Why would we do this? Why would we allow this? You know, the whole time I'm thinking, this is exactly what we don't want to happen. And so, you know, thinking about how we as researchers are constantly trying to predict things, right? We have predictive models where we want to see what's going to happen out there. We want to see if we can, you know, get ahead of the curve. And yet in the line of policing, getting ahead doesn't really work the same way. And I know I left watching that movie for the first time thinking, if this is the future of criminal justice, I'm scared, right? This is not for me. Luckily, I don't think tech has evolved that far quite yet. So, you know, we don't have to worry about it. But I remember seeing that movie for the first time and thinking, if this is how we're going to use technology to fight crime, I'm good. I don't want to be part of that.
So
Yeah,
in your
yeah.
mind, go ahead.
I was saying that's a great choice. When Taylor was saying that one of her choices was a future oriented movie, and that was technology, I was thinking that it had to be like one of two movies, and Minority Report was exactly what I was thinking that maybe someone would choose. I mean, it's a classic Orwellian tale about the positive technology selling, you know, and consumerism, selling things to us based on our eye scans, but then the state and and supervisory. So good choice.
Thank you.
Yeah, the self-driving car part of it, I remember thinking, oh, that's really fantastical. And now we have Waymos, which, holy cow, it's not that far off.
Very true.
I'm shocked when we're walking around Georgia Tech's campus and there are just those, you know, self-driving cars going around. And it's like, my gosh, like part of the future actually finally happened.
It's pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Adam, how about you?
Well, Tom, then I'm gonna steal maybe your most obvious choice right off the list. Then, if I'm gonna go for classics, and I will choose Sneakers 1992. Then, so I will steal it if we're going for best of all time here. This is a movie that I saw at the theater back in 1992 when I was 16 years old, and probably saw it on video a year later. But then I never saw it again until this last weekend, where I wanted to rewatch it for this podcast. It's a really, really good movie, but one of those things where I think that if you've kind of seen it a couple of times, I just, it wasn't like, it's not overly action packed, but I always kind of viewed it more as a spy movie. But when you really go back and watch it, it's just shocking about how good the movie is, especially if you're talking about the hacking subculture, the break-in at the very beginning of the movie where you have two college students, maybe they're grad students. They have to physically break into a building first and then hack into a computer system in order to steal some of Richard Nixon's money and move him around to more progressive causes. So many examples of social engineering throughout the movie, such as the elevator scene, trying to get the person to say certain voice words to get past the voice activated security systems. The awesome character Whistler, having to listen to frequencies in order to hack into stuff. There's so many just examples like that where I think that it truly shows the true form of hacking. Of you have to really have a knowledge of systems, especially telephone systems at that time. And then even the big point they point at the very end where they say it's all about information and who controls it. I can say when I first saw it, I mean, like I thought it was a spy movie, and I thought it was a little maybe over the top, like, oh, things aren't going to be like that. And now you kind of watch it and like, oh my gosh, like they were right so long ago. And if anything, it was a cautionary tale, but they probably didn't even say enough regarding how concerning it is regarding, what the NSA and the FBI do regarding surveillance of individuals. So, Tom, I stole that one from you.
You did. That was on my list, so good job. I used to show that movie in a class that I taught 20 years ago, when I was a grad student for criminal justice and media. I would show Sneakers when we would talk about hacking because it's pretty good.
It's funny to go back and watch movies like that. And I'll admit, I've only seen Sneakers once in my life, so I don't remember many plot points. But, to think back about what technology looked like then and to watch it in today's world, like I'm making a list of what I need to go watch when we're done here. Um, but to think about like the social side of it is exactly the same, right? Social engineering is still a major concern for us. It's still a major component of most cyber attacks. And so to think about how the technology may have changed greatly over the past 20 years, but to see how they go about it, that's another thing that I think is interesting about what you brought up, is that there's a lot of physical components to cybercrime that people forget. And so, when we think about like penetration testing, sometimes getting into a building is part of that. And so I think, just like you said, it's a really solid example of what like hacking generally feels like. And yeah, I would agree. It does lean spy as well.
Yep. A bunch of security consultants who hack banks and stuff like that all coming together. It's a great story for sure. All right. Well, then, since you stole mine, I'm going to take the one that probably no one will pick, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm going to go with Hackers, the 1995 Johnny Lee Miller and oh gosh, why am I blanking on her name?
Angelina Jolie.
Thank you. Yes, Angelina Jolie, the classic depiction of hackers. It's got a lot of flaws. It's not a great movie, but there are bits and pieces of it that are super accurate when we talk about hacking in general. Now, hacking to the time, but still, it's a great movie in terms of it starts with this young hacker attacking a target and then getting arrested, and then he winds up being prosecuted and his family has to move, and then he meets up with a bunch of friends in real life, and many of them are into hacking, and there's a lot of use of handles and even some appropriate language to the time about stuff like rainbow books, which were relevant to hacking in the late 80s, early 90s, and some phreaking. So I love that movie as a quasi-realistic depiction of the hacker subculture. Now, the tech is super dated, and there's some really, really embarrassing depictions of the internet, but what are you going to do? It's 1995.
I have a question. Would you mind defining rainbow books? Because I've heard this term and I don't really have a good feel for it, but this seems like a good time to talk about it.
So they were color-coded manuals, and I can't remember if they were Department of Defense or telephone company related, but they were color-coded based on what the information involved. And so the red book was about this, the blue book was about this.
Interesting. Okay, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a fun choice by Tom there. This was a movie that I had only seen a couple clips here and there, but this weekend I decided to watch it in full. And my family walked out halfway through the movie where they couldn't make it through it. However, I can see why Tom likes it. I did find it both fun and kind of cringy a little bit. To me, it's a little similar to one of my favorite movies of all time, like Starship Troopers, where I realize the movie is terrible, but I love it. And so it doesn't matter to me. But I think it's. Although certain aspects of the movie, just feel kind of dated, and I could really, really do without Matthew Lilliard's character, serial killer, or maybe if the bad guy was a little more menacing. That was my son's biggest critique, that the bad guy was just not menacing in the least bit. But it's almost like if you took our chapter from our textbook on hacking and someone tried to make a movie out of it regarding, once again, just discussion of handles. The face-to-face hacker zones I thought was kind of cool, where you really have these group of hackers getting together, talking about these manuals, trying to impress each other. The movie literally talked about the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. There's a capture the flag context, social engineering. They refer to Elite. The kid actually had to go to rehab for computer addiction. So there's just a lot of cool stuff where I just kept on taking notes, like, it really does hit on a lot of cool, fun points that'd be very easy for students to watch that movie, enjoy it, laugh a little bit, but then connect it with what they're learning.
Yeah, if you want to catch a good recap podcast about how bad it is, I would definitely recommend checking out the How Did This Get Made episode of Hackers. It's a classic. All right. Well, Adam, you're up next. What's your second pick?
Oh, okay. So this is I didn't have an obvious second one, but I think I'm going to go with another classic that maybe people don't even think about as a cybercrime movie, but I just think it's worth bringing up here, and that's The Imitation Game, 2014, with Benedict Cumberbatch. Maybe once again, it's not truly cybercrime, but I just think that I've only seen the movie twice, and not somewhat recently. But for those of you who are listening who aren't familiar with it, the movie's about Alan Turing, who's trying to help crack Nazi codes. Called one of them is called Enigma, and he has to create a machine that breaks the code. And this machine is the very first computer. And then it actually ends up that Alan Turing ends up going to prison because he's gay, and eventually kills himself, I think, because of all the terrible medications that were forced upon him. So it's, the movie's also about those aspects as well. But whether it's I guess it's not really a cybercrime movie, so I'm breaking my own rules here. But I think it's a movie worth bringing up because I think that most students never watch it. And for some reason, this person has been lost to history and their contributions. And a lot of people, say that he's the reason we won World War II, or one of the major reasons. So I just wanted to highlight it.
That is a movie I've never seen. How about you, Taylor?
I believe I watched it once, but I, again, could not tell you plot lines. But I do remember it being sort of more socially focused, right? More on the side of to the social engineering kind of mentality of, using tech when you need it, but less cybercrime.
Well, good pick. I'm going to have to watch that myself.
Am I next?
Yep, you are up.
Okay, so I too am going to break the rules because as I was thinking about this, I know it's nice when we make the rules. But, when I was thinking about this, I kept thinking movies, and I kept coming back to an example of a TV show. And normally, and I'm going to preface this before I say it, I would not share this as an example of good police work, okay? But Criminal Minds is one of my favorite shows of all time, right? It really gets into the psych stuff, but the episode that I'm thinking of is the one where they talk about how Garcia, their computer wizard, got into the FBI and how she was a hacker beforehand and she got recruited because she had hacked into something she wasn't supposed to, blah, 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 right? And I just keep coming back to it because it was easily the first time I was exposed to hackers. I would bet money that it was the first time I saw it in a, TV show context. But it really looked at how the language of hackers is just as unique to them as language would be to us. And so when we think about programming, we don't think about creativity and uniqueness. And, we don't really think about it that way. But I really, from that portrayal, understood that hackers take on their own identity. They are part of groups. They have this social network that they work with. And then really learning about how there are tells, right, in programming language that you can say, okay, that's how so-and-so does it, or that's how so-and-so does it. And so it really showed me how the world of that gray hat hacking exists, right? Where most of what they're doing is just normal, good, right, pen testing kind of work, but yet they, turn to maybe get into a system that they aren't supposed to be or whatever, and now they've become, more black hat. And so that, I think, is my favorite portrayal of how, hackers are still humans and hackers still have human tells. And so, how we can learn from that was really fascinating to me.
Yeah, that's something you don't really see in media, is more of that analysis kind of component of it. So that's interesting.
Yeah. And then when I teach Intro to Cybercrime, one of the assignments that I always have is students need to watch a movie or a TV show where computer hackers are portrayed and compare it with, realistically how it's, how it's talked about in our textbook. And probably 25% of the students talk about Penelope Garcia.
Yeah.
Very inspirational for a lot of students, especially a lot of our female undergraduates who want to get into cyber somehow. And there's been over the years, like people used to talk about Mr. Robot all the time, and now no students talk about that anymore. But Penelope Garcia has always has maintained her popularity among students. So that's a great pick.
Yep.
Now, I forgot to do 2 picks, but Taylor, you need to do 2 picks. So what's your second?
Gosh. Okay, well now we're down my list a bit. And this is another one where I wouldn't necessarily focus on it as like learning about hacking, but I certainly was exposed to it and I saw it as kind of the evolution of crime. I'm gonna go with Skyfall. We're a big James Bond family. We watched kind of all the classic Bond films. Those are normal, particularly around the holidays. And so even though it's more Bond focused, that's kind of the plot of it. It does involve hacking, and so that movie was one of those where I really started to understand crime is evolving, right? Crime is changing. The Bond villains of the 70s and 80s don't look like the same Bond villains of the 2000s. And so really kind of seeing how that world has evolved into what we now consider cybercrime and what we study was really a fun moment for me.
So I've got to ask, who's your Bond? If you've seen most of them, who is your quintessential?
The problem is that I was introduced to Daniel Craig. And that's, I think because those were the first set I was exposed to, that's where my brain goes immediately. So that's going to be, I know that's a controversial take, but that's going to be my answer.
Not at all.
A hot take there. It's a hot take there, Taylor.
I know people feel very strongly about their James Bond, so.
How about you, Adam?
I might, being raised in the 80s, it's like, I think that's kind of almost who you pick, basically, like when you're 8 or 10 years old. And so I see James Bond as Roger Moore, and some people might have him as their least favorite James Bond of all time. My mom was a humongous James Bond fan, so we watched a lot of Sean Connery James Bond movies too. But Pierce Brosnan, they're all there. I mean, I think Timothy Dalton really gets the shaft regarding how good I think he really was, and all the problems that the studio had, so they weren't able to make more Timothy Dalton Bond movies. But I'll go with Roger Moore. But Tom, who's yours?
I am actually on Taylor's side as well. My Bond, my first one was Roger Moore with, what was the one in Paris? I can never remember. A View to a Kill.
I was about to say View to Kill. I was thinking San Francisco for that, though, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're right. But anyway, that was the first Bond that I remember seeing, and my dad was big into Bond, too. But as I've gotten older, the more I watch it, the more I like Daniel Craig. I just feel like there's something about his Bond that's really magnetic and interesting. And it does channel a little bit of that Timothy Dalton energy, too. So I like both of them. It's just a different take on Bond that I enjoy. But yeah, it's an interesting one too, because it's Silva as the bad guy in Skyfall, right? Yeah. And his sort of weird gender fluid identity walking through that room full of servers in the middle of nowhere. It's a really interesting presentation. Yeah. Well, Adam, how about you?
Hacking is involved in this movie, and I'm not sure if it's overly cybercrime, too much focus, but I'll just claim The Matrix then. I will just go ahead and take the original. I know people might say that, the second Matrix might be better regarding cybercrime and understanding computers, but The Matrix is tied for my favorite movie of all time. So, here you just have a classic movie that people watch, I think, even whether they don't care about computer hacking or cybercrime. And I think clearly we see the impact of Tom's movie Hackers on this movie, on how hackers are portrayed in The Matrix based on that. But I think, it's obviously a cybercrime movie. We have Neo and even like Cypher. Cypher can read code by just looking at it. So Neo's skill is better than the other, but the other hackers still have this super godlike power. So amazing movie. Probably terrible representation of computer hackers, of course, but it's one of my favorite movies. So I'm gonna take The Matrix.
Taylor, where do you land on The Matrix? I'm curious.
I'll be honest. I saw it very young, so I didn't really get it at first. And so over the years, I've watched it here and there, and just kind of, it seemed kind of to your point of it not being like a great representation of almost above my head. I don't get it. Like, it's too much to comprehend. Like, when I was younger, I really felt like hacking it, I'm never going to understand it. Like, I'm never going to get it. It's always going to be something way bigger than me. And so I think when I think of The Matrix and I think of watching it, I think of kind of this overwhelming feeling of tech is scary and it can do a lot of things that we don't know. And I just remember kind of having that fear related to The Matrix of what I don't know is scary, and I don't want to know that I don't know it.
I remember thinking, wow, this is such a mind-blowing movie the first time I saw it. And at the time, I was in college, and my friend was a manager at a movie theater. And for weeks, we would go on Thursdays at midnight after the theater closed and watch The Matrix. It was between that and then eventually it was supplanted by The Phantom Menace. But I watched The Matrix way too many times at the theater. And yeah, there's just something about that presentation. It's not perfect, but it's really interesting.
I am so jealous of that, Tom, because I was working on my master's degree at that time, and I remember it coming out, but I don't remember the trailers too much. And I remember someone in one of my classes went to go see it, and they were just talking about all these, big, philosophical questions, and I was like, okay. And then a year later, I bought that movie for my mom for Christmas, and I decided to watch it without her. And so I watched it from like midnight to 2 a.m. And this was on VHS tape, of course. And I was so blown away by it that all of a sudden I rewound and watched it again. And it's the only time I've ever watched a movie back to back where I was like, I just have to see this again. So I'm jealous, Tom, that you saw it that many times at the theater.
Oh, yeah. It was awesome. That was a great time. All right. Well, since you guys have picked some of my top picks, I'm kind of hovering over what I'm going to go with.
Here it comes.
Because I had Skyfall on my list, too. All right. So for my first, I think I'm going to do Swordfish. Have any of you seen it?
I knew it. I watched it last night because I knew you were going to choose this thing. So,
if you haven't seen Swordfish, the premise of the movie, it's convoluted. It's very much of its time, but essentially a hacker played by Hugh Jackman is recruited by a criminal group, quasi-criminal, I don't even know, who has government ties. It's complicated, but suffice to say, they bring him in because they know he's this expert hacker. They challenge him multiple times to demonstrate his skill, and then there's a good, I don't know, I feel like it's at least 5 minutes long of him programming a virus. And the presentation of it is not great, but it really does highlight, I think, that flow state you get into and the way in which hackers talk about developing code. He's really into it. He's really thinking about it. It's fun to watch. It's not very realistic at all, but there's times when they seem to get like just enough on the margins to get it right. Adam, what's your take?
Well, I thought it's a fine action movie. I agree. Like Hugh Jackman kind of saves the movie, I think, in my opinion. And I think that those kind of scenes where he's working with the computer and trying to hack and are some of the better parts of the movie. It was just a movie that originally got such bad press release when it came out that I just never kind of wanted to see it. And I think it really was that, I was reading that it was produced by Joel Silver. And Joel Silver produced the Matrix trilogy, Die Hard, Predator, one of the best movies of all time, Commando. And so, this movie is a big Joel Silver action production. I just think that it probably just didn't raise to people's expectations. But if you just kind of watch it for what it is, it's a pretty fun action movie. And I think Hugh Jackman's pretty good in it. I like John Travolta's work in the 70s and 80s, but I don't like anything he's done, including Pulp Fiction. So I find John Travolta painful. So sorry, John. But
Wow.
That is a hot take right there.
For
that John
sure.
Travolta can ruin any movie, including
No, not
Face
that
Off.
specifically. I'm thinking of Hairspray when you say John Travolta, but
I
that
mean, Saturday Night Fever, a good movie. Staying Alive,
fair.
Urban Cowboy. I don't know, but so
That's funny.
I would enjoy the movie more if John Travolta wasn't in there. But
Fair,
it was a fun movie.
For my second pick, I'm really going to throw a curveball in. I wasn't even necessarily thinking about this, but I feel like I might as well get it out now. My second one is maybe not necessarily a cybercrime movie in the same vein as what we've been talking about with more like hacking-oriented movies. But my second pick is going to be D. Snyder's Strangeland.
Never seen it.
I have heard of it, but I've never seen it.
So I can't remember if it's from 98 or 99. It's late 90s movie about Dee Snider plays this serial killer called Captain Howdy, who meets his victims on the internet, communicates with them, kind of brings them in, lures them into a meeting, and then connects with them that way. And it's, you know, like a horror movie, suspense movie, but the fact that they were hitting on the role that the technology itself can play in recruitment, solicitation, drawing people out. He's also very online for the time and is very enmeshed in sort of like a body modification subculture. So it hits on some of the ideas that we've seen subsequently about the way that technology has been used, whether it's, you know, like that cannibal case out of Germany, or some of the people who've committed homicides via Craigslist as a recruitment vehicle. I think it hits on an interesting idea that for the time was kind of novel, but you can see it working itself out over time. So I know it's a weird one, but I'd recommend, you know, if you're up for a bad 90s movie, it's worth an hour and a half of your time.
Is this the same Dee Snider from Twisted Sister?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Didn't know he was in the movie realm, but that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a weird one too, because the name Captain Howdy was in some songs of theirs from the 80s. There's like a weird 4-issue comic book series that came out after the movie. It's got all these weird little tie-ins here and there. So if you're into some fringe movie making, that's a good one to check out.
I like it.
Adam, how about you?
Then choose Tron, 1982. I will right away admit that the movie's a little slow. However, I think the movie's good. I mean, it's one of the first movies you're going to find that literally focused on computer hacking. Jeff Bridges' character, Kevin Flynn, thinks that his co-worker is stealing some of his ideas. So Jeff Bridges literally has to hack into the digital world, you know, as they kind of are referring to it, and puts himself in the digital world. I think the animation actually is pretty good for 1982. I mean, I saw Tron Ares a couple weeks ago, and, you know, of course the computer graphics are so much better, but really, like, the ideas aren't that much different per se. And I think that it kind of helps people if you think about what a program is, or what a master control program is. And if you kind of think of them as humans a little bit, who are being told to do something, it kind of allows people to easily think about programs, master control. Okay, that person's in charge. Who's your defense? And I think it, you know, probably really inspired, you know, 20 years of computer hacking movies. Even when you look at how in the movie Hackers, when they start trying to portray what the inside of a computer looks like, or some of the movies Black Hat that came out a couple years ago. There's so many movies that always want to try to show 3-dimensionally what is inside a computer, and it just seems like that's kind of what Tron did to some extent. But Tron being a little more cartoonish. But yeah, I think it's a pretty good movie. Like I said, kind of slow, but overall, it still holds its weight after all these years.
Yeah, I think Tron is one of those where I think like it's very visually appealing in terms of, you know, a lot of the imagery of what hacking is like the computer, you know, the information streams and all this kind of like new techie stuff. And I think like visually, that's what I think of when I think of like early hacking, right? Is that information going everywhere and, you know, all this craziness.
Yeah, I've only seen Tron once. I'm not a very good 80s kid, but I've seen more than enough clips and ephemera from it to know, yeah, it's not bad. And the presentation of of digitization and stuff like that, I think, was really interesting too. So that's pretty good. All right, Taylor, you are up.
Okay, so I'm going to break the rules once again and go with the TV show. But this is one that I don't think we could get away with not talking about is Black Mirror. There's a few instances within Black Mirror of cybercrime, but the one that comes to mind, and I think this was early on in Black Mirror, was an episode where everyone's social status was digitally managed. Right. And so like you won points, you lost points based on if you were nice to people or if you were mean to people or if you get along with them or if you got invited to certain parties, you got more points. And so, at the time I was like, this is ridiculous. Right. My friends were like, you're going to love this show. You got to watch it. And then we watched that episode and I was like, I don't feel great about this, you guys. This isn't really what I want for our lives, And then over the years, you see Instagram likes becoming basically currency and, the monetization of social media. And so now I'm like, well, maybe we're not that far off from, hey, you're a bad person. Therefore, you are not going to get as many opportunities in this world as the rest of us. And that's a really scary thought. But I remember watching that episode in undergrad, just sitting there like, that's a scary future for us if that's where we're headed. But I think Black Mirror is one of those shows where I've watched bits and pieces of it, but there's a lot of cybercrime representation in that movie or in that show.
I often think about that when I am presented with the tip screen on Uber, and I'm just thinking, "Oh God, what am I going to do?"
Everyone gets 5 stars. Yeah. That's a really great point. Uber's a really good example of like the real world aspects of that. Does Uber limit you if you like? Do you not get as many ride opportunities if you have a bad rating?
That's a good question. I don't know. But I will say I was recently in a foreign country, and during rush times, nobody was picking you up. But if you tipped them in advance, then they might pick you up. So interesting gaming the system there.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Very interesting.
That was a good choice by Taylor for Black Mirror. I think it's one of those shows that some people really love it, and some people have never seen episodes. And sometimes when people say you have to watch Black Mirror, you have to watch it, like they build it up so much that it's hard for anything to ever live up to those expectations. Mm-hmm. And I think Black Mirror can deliver. That's I've never seen all the seasons. I've only seen a couple. My wife will say like, you really would love this episode, and I'll watch it. Like there's a really great Star Trek episode in there, and it just it lives up. So good choice.
Isn't there essentially like a sextortion episode also? I'm trying to remember. I know there's one where a kid thinks that they've been watched, and I can't remember where the plot unravels from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't remember exactly where it is, but I do remember that kind of what is it, voyeurism of like, somebody's watching and you don't really know who. Another scary thought that, we all love to live with. I used to think everyone was so panicky when they covered up their webcams, and now I take mine down every chance I get.
All right, well, I guess we can make this the last round. So what's your second pick?
For me, okay, so this is controversial for the rules because I've never actually seen this movie, but this is another one where I think I'd like your guys' take on it, and I think we'd be in trouble for not mentioning it, but is War Games. This is one that just keeps coming up. Everyone says, Taylor, you have to watch it. It is quintessential cybercrime, and yet it just has not made it on my TV yet. So I would love to hear your guys' take because it keeps getting recommended, but I have not seen it.
Adam, what do you think? I know I have an opinion.
Oh, I think it's a good classic 80s movie. I was 7 years old when this came out. I saw it at the theater. I saw it several times, on video or Showtime or HBO at that time. I think it's just that when you were a kid and during the 80s, these movies weren't cybercrime. They were just like, it's a movie that had a computer in it. So to me, like, this movie is a Cold War movie, basically. Because although although Matthew Broderick's character, of course, hacks into the computer system at his school at the very beginning to change his grades. And of course, he causes almost World War III by hacking into NORAD or whatever it is. I guess as a kid, once again, it seemed more like a movie where it's like, oh, it's really cool. You have this computer hacker. I didn't own a computer at that time as a kid. So I kind of just saw it as like whoa, like, we almost had, nuclear war going on. And but I thought it was a good movie. I hadn't probably seen it in 10 years, though.
Yeah, it's been a little bit for me too, but I remember thinking the first time I saw it in the 80s when I was a kid, it was like, wow, these computers are really cool. You can do so much stuff with them. And didn't really think that much about the hacking until I went back and revisited it when I was doing my PhD and thought, wow, this is really a good representation of the technology of the time, the use of war dialing, just randomly calling numbers to see what's a computer and what isn't. It's the kind of thing where now, if I showed it to my kids, it would be like showing them people sitting around the radio in the 30s. Like they would probably have no real understanding of what this is or why did they do that? We don't even have a home phone. So the idea of putting like a phone into a cradle modem would blow their minds. But yeah, I think for what it is, it's a pretty good movie.
Yeah, and even that, I mean, even in the Hackers movie, we saw that, the kid wasn't allowed to use the telephone. He wasn't, and then the mom comes in the room and says, "Did you hook up the computer to the phone line again?" And so, people today were like, "What does that even mean?" or something. And but the fact that Hackers is 12 years after at least what War Games here is shows that technology was pretty similar for a good decade regarding, of course, speed of modems improved, but the basic idea that we were still communicating through a phone line system is pretty consistent. So I think it tells a lot about kids and their use of computers. And most people's if they had a computer, they had no internet. They weren't hooking up to a telephone. So that was, I think, pretty mind blowing that he could even hook up his computer to the telephone.
It reminds me of my, so I have an honorable mention list of like movies that are not about cybercrime at all, but have some in it. Makes me think of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right? Like, yes, he does technically hack his school computer, right? But like, you would never put that in the pool of cybercrime movies, right? And so it's interesting that War Games has become such this like big classic, like named hacker movie, and yet you kind of think of it as a war movie, and it's an interesting take.
Adam, do you have an honorable mention before we do your pick, since you mentioned one of yours, Taylor?
If I had an honorable mention, I'm going to go with The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Solid.
This is another movie with a very famous hacker character, played by Rooney Mara. The Liz Salander. All my students always like talking about, Salander here, and in their essays. But once again, this is a movie that I would not really consider to be a computer hacking movie at all. Like if anything, the main character, I thought the first time I saw it was really Daniel Craig's character, and it's a pretty old style investigation. I mean, he's a newspaper reporter who literally went somewhere and was doing interviews and was reading case files and very, very old school. And then he needed help to hack into some stuff. And so great character. The books are good as well. I'm not, I have to admit, I'm not much of a reader, but I've read some of these and they're extremely good books. And it just does a good job of how old school techniques and, new techniques, are necessary to find the truth, to solve this 40-year-old murder. So that's my honorable mention.
Good choice.
Yeah, I think that's a good one of the meshing of like, you can't have cybercrime without a human element. And so if you forget, the human is behind the computer, you're going to miss the whole story. Investigations are still very much about human behavior, just facilitated by tech. And so I think that's a really good example of that.
What's your prime pick?
My prime pick? Boy, I think we really kind of almost gone over all of them. I was thinking about, does Terminator 1 count as cyber? But it's almost not. I mean, it really does seem like I'll just say T1 then. I was going to talk about the net Sandra Bullock, but that's just for fun. Let's throw in T1. It literally has AI. A cyborg comes back to try to kill people, and the only reason I don't think we consider it to be a cybercrime movie is because the internet wasn't invented yet. But I'm pretty sure if I went back and watched it, there's probably some scene where there's some computer and someone has some dial-up modem somehow, but the people are sent back in time. You can easily imagine that movie where the Terminators are not sent back through a some kind of time warp or something, but instead is through some kind of weird internet process or something. So that'll be my hot take. I'm going to choose a great movie in T1 and say that's a cybercrime movie, and I think it definitely inspired 20 years worth of cyborg movies and everything that Taylor is saying regarding her concerns of government surveillance and all that. Well, holy Lord, what is this movie telling us about our concerns of AI?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's even that much of a concern. Like, in the news, we see that there's AI programs that literally lie and don't want to die. So they lie, they hide themselves in order to not be deleted, right? So I think, I know might sound a little crazy, but I think the idea of T1 and Terminator franchise, or even the Matrix, is not that outlandish regarding 100 years from now what we actually might create, and we can't control it. We're not very good at that as humans, in my opinion. So that's my concern. Taylor, is AI.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair concern, because I just recently saw, I don't remember what country it was, but they tried to make a more humanistic AI robot, and it was just like cloth on the outside of robotic parts. I'm like, we could see the robot behind it. It doesn't count, right? And so it makes me think of like the half Terminator face, right? And so I don't think we're that far off from having robots, walk amongst us. And, we think about self-driving cars. What's to stop somebody from putting a robot as an Uber driver, So I don't think we're that far off. Fortunately, currently, robots fall over a lot, so I feel pretty good about that. But, we're seeing more and more the little robot dogs that are delivering food and stuff. So, it's coming.
Those dogs, for some reason, that terrifies me more than anything. Just a fast-moving robot.
Yeah.
No, thanks.
Yeah, at knee level. You're like, great, cool. It's going to take me out on the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. For my honorable mention, I'm going to zig a little bit, and then I'm going to zag with my main choice. Has anybody seen The Accountant 2?
The Accountant 2? I can't say I have.
I think I saw all the Accountant 2. I think Accountant 1 was the one I went back and started watching. I found it, the beginning part so boring I stopped watching it. But The Accountant 2, though, actually is a pretty good forward just action movie, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. No, I think that's what I just saw a couple months ago.
Yeah, there's a good scene in it. Admittedly, the movie is not a cybercrime movie. It's just an action movie. But there's a scene in it where a group of kids effectively does open source intelligence analysis and then hacks a person's computer. And it's a pretty, well, there's parts of it that are a little unrealistic, but at least the thought process is sound where, okay, well, we have this footage. We can see a person taking a selfie. Let's see if we can find that person because we can see her face. So let's see if we can find that account. And then once we find the account, we then try to hack their house. Let's go in through the weakest point in their internet connection and try to get in there. And then once they're inside of the network, moving through the computer. It's at least logic flow relevant. Parts of it don't necessarily work, but the scene itself is interesting, and I think it's a fun kind of modern depiction of how you might use hacking for some interesting strategies.
It's on that note, it's interesting how many of the movies we've talked about have been action or action oriented, right? Because we think of cybercrime and we think of hackers especially, and the going stereotype is the kid sitting in the computer with his basement or in his basement, and yet here we have like multi-million-dollar action movies based on hacking behaviors. It's really an interesting combination, right? Is it that they want to make hacking more mainstream, so they put it into action movies, or is it they're trying to make hacking more relevant, so they want to bring in action to get people to go watch it? Like it's weird because it's not what you would expect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for being the most mundane sitting at a computer kind of thing, it certainly can be made very exciting.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm sure people are going to have an opinion about my last pick. So anybody watching this episode or listening to it, please drop us some comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts on our picks, particularly my last pick. I'm going to go out with a bang and say The Beekeeper. Has anybody seen The Beekeeper?
Beekeeper.
That was going to be my dishonorable mention if we had time to talk about dishonorable mentions.
We certainly do.
Now, it is very much a straight up the middle Jason Statham dad action movie, but the premise hinges entirely around online fraud and call center fraud, and the inciting incident of the film is a character committing suicide due to fraud. And so the rest of it is outlandish and crazy and stupid at times, and their depiction of call centers isn't necessarily accurate. At least to my understanding, it's a lot of Southeast Asian people forced into the labor. But the idea of call center fraud and its consequences, I think, is really, really interesting. And it's nice to see a movie, granted, deal with it in a way that isn't necessarily real, but at least deal with that as a real problem. So, Adam, why were you going to say dishonorable?
Well, first, I love Jason Statham. I'm not sure if Tom knew that, but he's my one of my favorite actors. I think he's our modern day Chuck Norris. So I will watch any movie with Jason Statham, and seen some of his movies, repeated times. Just saw one of his movies a couple of nights ago called 13. It's a pretty kind of messed up movie you guys might want to check out or something. However, the reason why I had it as a dishonorable mention is because I agree with everything that Tom said, but the call center is based in the U.S. And I guess that's the reason why I just thought it was so weird, is that if this call center was based in Russia, China, North Korea, or some other country where we don't have extradition treaties, I just find the movie a little more accurate. But this call center that's committing all this fraud is literally based in the U.S., and the FBI, keeps on saying, we can't do anything about it. We can't do anything about it. And it's like, what are you talking about? So I guess that was the only reason I find it annoying, where it's a great action movie, but just that one aspect just annoys me, that, of course, the FBI could easily, there's so much evidence that they could easily just bring this major corporation down that's caused so much fraud and, as Tom said, suicide in at least one case. So, so overall, yeah, I agree. Great action movie, and allows us to talk about online fraud. But it's just that one aspect that bothered me.
True. I mean, there's a lot to not like about it. So I completely understand it being at the bottom of someone else's list for sure. So, yeah, Taylor, I don't know if you are stuck on a plane sometime. It's a good movie to watch.
Okay. Good to know. That's
but funny. I don't know if I would go out of my way to see it necessarily, but it's not bad for what it is. You could watch the clips on YouTube and get the gist.
Okay, that works. That's funny because that's kind of how I feel about it. I wouldn't put this in the dishonorable necessarily. If in the context of Cybercrime, yes, but I think it's a good movie. But Wolf of Wall Street always comes up in my classes as like investment fraud. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. But it is not a movie I would ever put in the category of a cybercrime movie. And so it's interesting when we talk about things, I've noticed a lot of what I pull from is more modern, right? More just like now, right? What I'm watching right now. And so when students hear that and they pull out Wolf of Wall Street, I'm like, not really where I was going with that, but okay, yeah, I can see that, right? There is, the use of telephone networks and, all that kind of stuff, but not really cyber-y. My other dishonorable mention was The Pacifier. Fantastic movie. I can't remember who's the main guy. Is Vin Diesel. Is it Vin Diesel?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so the entire premise is that he's there to protect this family because they have some cyber program on a disc, right? And so the entire movie is them protecting this CD-ROM, and they have a pet duck. Like, it's a crazy movie. And that's another one where, like, technically the plot line is related to a cyber program that's being protected, but it has nothing to do with cybercrime.
That's a funny one. I would not have expected you to mention that. That's really good.
That's one of our family classics, one of our go-tos.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a really fun conversation. I feel like we could probably do a whole other episode about the worst cybercrime movies to pick. But I thought, since we've been talking about a lot of movies, let's do a quick movie quiz just to end the episode on a high note.
Wow. Okay.
All right.
So, if you're ready, this is going to be cybercrime-related content, so nobody can say this isn't relevant. So just shout it out if you think you have the answer. Just say your name. All right. This famous hacker was a film consultant on the movie Hackers.
Adam. Is it Kevin Mitnick?
You are correct. Nice job.
There it is.
I thought that actually when I was watching that movie that someone had literally interviewed Kevin Mitnick or just read his book or something, and it's almost like someone like I said was just taking information out. Okay, one.
Good job. All right, you're on the board. So let's see. This movie was used as a basis for Kevin Mitnick's prosecution and solitary confinement.
What was the first part of that question?
This movie was used by prosecutors as a basis to justify Mitnick's prosecution and solitary confinement while awaiting prosecution.
The War Games?
Correct. Good job.
Fair. That makes sense.
Yep, in the charging documents, it's repeatedly mentioned that he might be able to cause a nuclear war if given access to telephony because of his phone freaking and hacking skills.
So the prosecutor used a fictional movie. Got it. Cool. Okay.
Probably sentencing, right? But yeah, okay.
So we're going to stick with Mitnick here. Adam, you're you're taking it. Taylor, this might be an opportunity for you to pick up a point. So not a long quiz, but a fun one. So since we're kind of sticking with Mitnick, the last question. Kevin Mitnick was required to use a cardboard computer while being a guest star on this early 2000s television show.
He was on it? He was featured on it?
He was a guest for one episode.
Yes.
As a computer hacker.
As a computer hacker. Early 2000s makes me think... No, I think The Wire was before that. Mm-hmm. When was The Wire?
Oh, I'm sorry. The Wire was after that.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
A major TV network, so not cable.
ABC, CBS, NBC. Probably not in the CSI world. I don't know.
Is it actually like suspense, or is it actually like a weird comedy, like that he was in a comedy for some reason?
No, it was a kind of action suspense show.
I'm going to guess like Law and Order, something like that.
It was Alias.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that show.
Yep, a blast from the past. Because of his requirements around post-release, he was not allowed to be in front of a real computer, so they used a cardboard box setup computer.
That's hilarious.
So that way he didn't violate the conditions of his parole.
On screen.
Yes. All right. Well, this was a lot of fun. Nice work, Adam. Good job. You won the no prize for this this particular quiz. So great work. Anything you want to tell people to go look at, or anything that you want to share that you want to encourage people to do?
I think just we cover a lot of movies on this podcast. So if you haven't watched any of them, just take a chance to look at them some and provide feedback to Taylor and Tom regarding especially regarding Tom's list. I mean, boy, you look at Tom's list of the best cybercrime movies of all time. We got Hackers and Swordfish and Dee Snider. So provide some feedback. Yeah,
mine's definitely a hipster weirdo list. So I was just trying to keep it interesting. Well, thank you for joining us. This was a lot of fun. I hope that your new year is off to a good start, and we will see you the next time we cross the firewall.
Thanks for listening to the Crossing the Firewall podcast. This is a production of the Center for Cybercrime Investigation and Training in the School of Criminal Justice at Michigan State University, produced by J.J. Thomas. The thoughts and opinions expressed are those of the hosts and the guests and do not necessarily reflect those of the university. If you have a comment or a question about the show, please email us at crossingthefirewall@gmail.com. Also, make sure that you follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn for more information. And if you're enjoying us on your favorite podcast app, please make sure that you like the show and leave us a review so that way everybody knows what we're up to. And if you're listening in on YouTube, make sure that you like us and subscribe so that way you're staying up to date on everything that is Crossing the Firewall.